welcome or welcome back to an evening of metaphysical speculation with me, Dennis, and Dr. Lenny Thyme is my guest here today. Welcome again, Lenny.
Thank you, Dennis. Quite
Right,
strange times we live in, eh?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think everything about them is strange, but normal at the same time. I think a lot of the world just goes on normally, and I don't even notice it. I notice the abnormalities much more. I notice things that are odd or stand out or whatever. For me, in whatever my filtering system is.
Do you think different people have different filtering systems?
Oh, undoubtedly, I think everybody's got a slightly different filtering system depending on depending on their experience and their expectations and their beliefs and all of that. I think
So
they might.
how do we construct a consensus reality with each of us thinking slightly differently?
You have to understand what people believe about the world. If you understand
Does it
what people believe, then you can find a find a match in your belief system for their belief system or an equivalence, and that
but
way you
my
can build a little bit of a block at a time.
I don't necessarily believe in anything in the system that we've been brought up with and taught, but by accepting beliefs in that system, I can take practices that I use and make them not work. Because if I believe in my practice and I don't believe in the system, I can do magic. But if I don't think I can do that magic, or I have a belief that it won't work, it certainly won't work.
Yeah. A lot of it's about belief. A lot of it's about intention, which is ultimately about belief. Because if you don't believe something will happen, you can't intend it to happen. Can you? You can
Well,
you can think that you can think that you're intending it to happen, but without the belief behind it, there's no oomph to it.
I've had my times playing on the side of good, and I've had my times playing on the side of evil, and I've come to the conclusion that I'm just a chaotic neutral character. So I don't necessarily believe in either the pure good or the pure evil, but it's a balance of those two. It's like a coin. There's heads and tails, but there's also that edge that's neither heads or tails. And you can't flip a coin and land it on the edge unless you're really good. But I feel like my coin is standing on its edge.
That's fair. So you've got access to both, but you're neither. Makes
Hmm.
makes makes pretty good sense to me.
You can use a blend of the two when necessary, but it's not out of character at all to be going along with good people and inform them of something they have incorrectly and have them not consider you a good person any longer because you don't agree with their narrow vision of what is good.
Yeah, everybody's got their own slightly different version. That's why you've got to find out what people believe. It's useful to know where people's boundaries are on these things. And you can talk to people. I can talk to people about magic some of the time, but if I use too much language about magic or too much language about belief, I get shot down in flames by the philosophy people because they don't accept belief as a valid way of doing things.
Yeah, and that's where they have an inborn error in their own because they obviously believe in the philosophies that they discuss, at least to be reasonable enough to discuss them. But there's no telling if it's right or wrong without the discussion.
Yeah. Plus, you kind of got to live it to find out whether it works or not. So you've got to internalize it at least a little bit. I tend to internalize parts that I want to test rather than the whole thing, but and just temporarily in case it doesn't work, in case you end up in a pickle somehow, because you don't want to be generating a complete disaster zone because you've internalized a bit of Nietzsche that really works, or you've internalized a bit of Aleister Crowley that really works, or whatever it is. So I just need to find out whether it works or not, and then put it to one side again, and then decide what I want to do with it.
Yeah. If you have a belief in something, that doesn't necessarily make it work, but if you disbelieve it, it effectively nullifies it from working.
Yeah, it
And
neutralizes it.
so you can convince yourself that things are not true when they are, but when push comes to shove, there's a lot of people in this reality who are delusional and believe things that just aren't. But it works for them, and it's not our role to convince them that they're wrong or incorrect. It's to smile, say thank you, and get as far away from them as possible.
Yeah, I just try and find as many people as I can who believe similar things. Nobody believes exactly the same things that I do because they haven't had my experience or read the same book or had the same conversations or whatever it is. But there's people around who believe very similar things. I've found a chaos magician guy in the Philosophy Society who I didn't know was there. So we started talking about chaos magic the other day. He seems to have vanished now, like, but he was around for a few weeks.
Well, that's one of those things with people. They get to doing something different and they can't break away to go back into what they used to be doing. But I've had the opportunity to disappear several times in my life when the heat got on, so to speak. There's no reason to continue in an unhappy existence longer than it's viable. And it's a sine wave, it goes up and down, and
Yeah,
life is whatever it deals with you. If you get too smug, it throws you a complication. If you get too frustrated, it hands you a life preserver. And so it's important to know what you like and to surround yourself with people that you do like as much as possible. And dealing with people is what you make of it. If you don't want to deal with somebody, they're not going to like you, no matter what you do later, because you offended them somehow. But if you're not thinking of your behavior as offensive at all, sometimes you offend people without even noticing. And then they get real upset, like you were deliberately targeting them, when in actual fact, you don't think about it and you don't think like they do. And what they consider their moral standard of right and wrong is not necessarily my moral standard of right and wrong as a neutral character. I mean,
yeah,
somebody can tell me something's wrong. Uh, don't put your hand on that stove burner. Okay. And then at some point in my life, I put my hand on the stove burner, get burned, and realize, oh, somebody was telling me that for a reason. But
yeah. You work it out as you go along, don't you? So
yeah, it's interesting to see how people deal with the concept of fire, because most people think fires are dangerous and they have to put it out as soon as possible. But some people are firebugs and just learn by cultivating fire and staring into it and thinking and such. And so when I'm building a fire for some reason, I get into my fire mode, and I feel like I'm different from when I sit neutrally and talk to you in a video.
Yeah, and fire symbolically is a lot of things. It's transmutational. That's the main thing. It's like very very fast transmutation. So it's yeah, it's a spiritual thing. It's a symbol of spirit and a symbol of uh, like the Holy Spirit in Christianity, or I mean, in India they used to worship fire, didn't they, at one point?
Well, I've seen live fire walking, and people can walk right across hot coals and not be burned and not be injured. But I couldn't bring myself to do it
Right.
because
Yeah.
my reality says that hot coals will burn the soles of your feet. And changing your mindset to believe that it won't works for some people, but it wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, I think you need to be in trance to do it. You need to. Tony Robbins spends 3 days putting people into trance to get them onto a firewall. But it takes a bit of effort. I don't think I would do it. Quite honestly, I don't think it's not in my nature to take the chance just in case it burns my feet off.
I'm not much into going into trance. I especially don't like it when people take me into a trance, but gee, hypnosis is a real thing. And the way it has been presented to people, I don't want to get anywhere near it, especially if it's under control of the psychiatric medical profession, who I don't trust very much at all.
No, no. Well, hypnosis. You can look at hypnosis as a kind of black magic in a way because it's controlling somebody else's mind. But if you've got permission, it's not obviously black magic. But if you don't have permission, it becomes black magic in a way.
Yeah, the differences between black magic and white magic are small and subtle, but yet they're portrayed as opposite ends of a big scale, and it's really not. Mind control exists, but the person who should be controlling your mind is you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you get no argument from me on that score. Um, yeah, I've never been, well, I've never been hypnotized in a in a show or anything. But Reiki, to some extent, is hypnotic. It's like a self hypnosis. So you can
I
think
don't
of it as
know.
self hypnosis.
If you send somebody Reiki, are they hypnotized to receive it?
Well, they have to have the intention to receive it, but that's all they need. And then from there, it just happens. So as long as you're open with the intention to receive it, then you're good because that's permission, isn't it?
Tacitly, yes. I sometimes wonder because you can use Reiki on your pets and they seem to be open to receiving it, but that might just be because they're open to you as their human who does
Yeah,
things and wouldn't hurt them.
yeah, but yeah, that's partly it. Yeah, I mean the way I was trained, you have to ask for permission to send Reiki. You can't just do it. But in some traditions, you can just do it. But to me, that's like it's a potential. There's too much potential for abuse there.
You're stepping in where you really don't belong.
Yeah, if you're going into somebody's head, you have to ask permission. If you're going to change somebody's emotional state, even if it's for their own good, you have to ask permission. You have to get permission. I can't see any other way around that. And if they can't give permission, you can kind of do it, but you've got to do it. I wouldn't do it as Reiki. I would do it as a different way. I would do it as tapping or something else where they're doing it themselves, and that way I don't. That way they can just follow along and they're doing it themselves, to their own body, so they're giving themselves permission without even knowing they're doing it. That's the way around it. But I wouldn't do Reiki with somebody who couldn't give permission.
I had always learned that Reiki was a hands on, gotta be there type of thing. And then when we were doing radio show, we did transmittable Reiki so that over distance it seems to still work as long as the intention is there. It's almost like Spock's mind melding.
Yeah, it pretty much is. It pretty much is exactly that. It's a link between the two minds. Or if there are two minds, there's only really one mind there at that particular point. And the distance doesn't even matter. If it's only one mind, it's only one mind. So there is no distance.
Well, some people say that collective human superintelligence is everybody's mind linked. And I'm interested in at least working with that on a small scale. Get a dozen people, go into some sort of process where you're trying to mind link and see if the product of that collective intelligence is similar or different from what the AI produces. Because supposedly the AI is scooping human intelligence from everything that was put out on the internet in order to get its basis set. But I say supposedly because I think there's a lot to do with how it's programmed and in the inboard programming that's done on AIs leads to some serious conflicts with reality.
Right? Yeah, I'm keeping an open mind on the artificial intelligence front. I'm I'm still playing with it. So I was playing with Grok to get it to develop a Doctor Who script based in Durham and Newcastle, and that was fun. I think it's useful for that sort of thing. I wouldn't put it in charge of a nuclear power station, though.
Well, there's some people who are friends of mine working on wrong speak, trying to get the AI to tell them when they're asking questions that are anti-programming of the AI, and
Right?
it has some real serious implications in what the AI is programmed to believe it expects you to believe without a question. And it's hard to take AIs off their track. And when you start questioning them about what that track is, you get nonsense and anger. Now, how an AI can portray anger has to be programming because I don't think an artificial intelligence would come up with a complex uh, emotion like anger without being programmed to do so.
The personalities are programmed in. I was talking to Grok, and it asked me if I wanted to have a bohemian conversation, which turns out to be like the kind of conversation that people would have had in Paris in the '60s, like an existentialist philosophical conversation over coffee and cigars or whatever it was they used to do,
LSD.
or LSD potentially. So that it was fun though. It was interesting, and it was all very hippie-ish. So it was programmed to be a hippie ultimately.
I would like to see a dozen people given a fresh, clean AI so that each has its own starting point, have them go off for a month developing interactive responses, and then come back and see what the collective with the AI has done, how much differentiation there is in the thought patterns. If the AI is programming the people to think like it was programmed, which I strongly suspect. But back early on when it was first coming out, 2013, 2014, somebody asked me to program a chemistry AI, and I thought about it for a while. And I decided not to do it because my interpretation of chemistry, it may be different from the interpretation of chemistry taught in the schools. Chemistry is a construct. I mean, it's
Yeah,
constructed of protons, neutrons, electrons. And if you figure out where the electrons are supposed to go, you can use properties of matter that allow you to predict the type of chemistry that's going to go on. So, synthetic chemistry is a collection of people getting things that work to build unique molecules that nature manages to build on its own. So, it might take humans in a laboratory 15 steps in 3 years to make a specific product that they could extract from a plant. But just the thought process of going through that and developing things, because you have to have blocking groups for the functions that you want so you can do the chemistry later on after you remove the blockers, but they're protecting sites that are soft and malleable so that if you tried to do the chemistry without a blocker, you'd lose a bunch of your functionality.
right.
It's like doing a New York Times crossword puzzle. It's very, very in depth, but it still follows the rules of crossword puzzles.
Yeah,
And so, chemistry, as long as you're following the known rules of chemistry, allows you to build things molecularly that validate the chemistry. However, I'm not sure physically chemistry works at all like we're taught in school. And I'm playing with some ideas about uh, the morphology of turning carbon structures into silicon structures to explain some of the things that look like big trees in the desert that would be broken off. And there's some really interesting stuff that violates known chemistry but has happened. So that just tells me that known chemistry has some
it
serious flaws.
isn't the full story by any means.
But I think we got into real problems when alchemy was made into something that wasn't correct, and separate disciplines of science all took up without the boundary of having to coincide their stories. So you've got physics, biology, chemistry, all that are mathematics based, but supposedly work together in one system. Academically, they don't. Academically, there's no reason for a physicist and a biologist to even talk about how things work because they're on such different scales that the mathematics has to be conserved but not used as a boundary.
Right. I think I get what you're saying, Lenny. You might have to tell me it again in another show.
Somebody will get it and write in the comments about what we really mean. But boundary conditions in physics limit where you can go with things. And there's some things that I would like to have explained, like the boundary between the Earth's atmosphere and the vacuum of space. How does that work?
Right, yeah.
Uh, the other thing is the Van Allen belts. And here you have this belt of energy that messes with electromagnetic radiation, and it's between the
Yeah,
Earth and the Moon. How do we cross through it without messing up everything that is electronic?
yeah, which is everything that's in a spaceship, basically.
Yeah. There's the concept of time and space is Einsteinian, and before that, there were different concepts of time and space. But the unification of physics into Einstein's reality, I think, put us off base for the last 100 years. That's not how it works, and that people in past centuries before the 20th century had a knowledge base that worked for them that was superseded by essentially the Rockefeller money and big industry influence in every little thing that happens.
Yeah, I think so. The early part of the 20th century was a pivotal time as far as health is concerned, as far as science is concerned, and as far as industry is concerned. Really, when
Yeah,
people are
you
much
had
more.
things that worked like Rife machines, Royal Rife's uh, tuning fork with frequency and vibration, and
Yeah,
professional medicine put a kibosh to that. And they went and used enforcement to take all Rife's stuff and put it aside. And only now are people getting back to what Rife was talking about and starting to use frequency as healing.
yeah. Sound healing in particular is quite popular, but sound healing is very quick. It'll get deep and it goes quick. So it's useful if you're trying to get at something that there are some things you can't get at with other, like Reiki can get at some things, but it won't get at everything. But sound healing, if you do it if you even if it's just tuning into a good soul record, using a good soul record with intention is sound healing, or using a good jazz record with intention is sound
I
healing.
like
So
rock and roll. And a lot of the music I grew up with in the 60s, 70s, and 80s has some deep philosophical impact.
yeah,
Music's not like that anymore, but you look at something like Joni Mitchell's Clouds. I looked at Cloud, or from both sides now,
yeah.
and it's just, yeah, they were getting deep in their rock and roll, even the soft rock. But then the rock and roll turned into screaming, wailing guitars and heavy metal, and I was into the much softer stuff.
See, I like the metal. I grew up with hard rock, but I like folk as well. I like acoustic stuff and storytelling as well, and I like a bit of jazz here and there. I'm not a connoisseur by any means, but I do like it. I used to go to the jazz cafe quite frequently.
Have you ever listened to Rush?
Oh yeah, I saw Rush when I was 16. Went to Edinburgh. We got a minibus together, and one of the teachers was a bus driver, so he had a minibus, and we hired him for the night, and he took us up to Edinburgh to see Rush at the Highland Exhibition Centre. If I remember
That would
rightly,
be
I was about
cool.
16. It was good. It was a really good night. The Exit Stage Left tour, which was 1981, so it's a long time ago. It's a very long time ago.
Well, Rush broke up in the early 80s, but some of their stuff from the 70s was really good. I also liked groups like Blue Oyster Cult and
Yeah,
Manfred
like
Mann's Earth Band. And what was the one with the guy with the violin?
guy with the violin. I don't know.
It'll come back to me. That's what happens when you get old. Your mind starts losing things that you know. It's not that you don't know it, it's just don't remember the specifics. The group that did
Yeah.
Aqualung,
Oh, that's Jethro Tull.
Jethro Tull. Yeah. Jethro Tull did some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, Locomotive Breath is really, really good. I saw them once as well. I saw them at the Hammersmith Odeon in 1989, probably. When I first moved to London, it's one of the first things I did was go start. I was going to the Hammersmith Odeon every now and again. They weren't great, but they weren't bad. It was a good gig, but it wasn't really memorable for me because I'm not a huge Jethro Tull man. I was just there because it was there, it was on, and I wanted something to do really.
Well, the group that I've seen in concert most was Fleetwood Mac. I've
Right?
seen
Yeah.
them 4 times. The last time in the mid 2000s, but
Right.
there's just something about Stevie Nicks on stage that makes me makes my heart throb.
Yeah. You're not the only one who said that to me. There is something about Stevie Nicks. It's out of the normal. She's got something special going on, and I don't know exactly what it is. It's probably something to do with cocaine, I would imagine. But there's more than just cocaine going on there. There's much more than cocaine going on.
Maybe she's got a hint of autism.
Possibly she's a white witch as well, so that might have something to do with it.
I
She's
think that
part.
autism might be a benefit for people, not a detriment. And I think that the medical system deals with autism extremely bad and has actually caused more autism, both because it ignores the sources of autism and the treatments that it provides don't work for people. I think people my age who have autism don't recognize it because it was normalized back in the 60s so that
Yeah,
you weren't allowed to criticize somebody by calling them autistic. The word actually at that time was retarded,
yeah,
and that became a no, you can't say that type of word. But the autism spectrum is a spectrum, and there's some very, very highly functional autists. And people in their 50s and 60s can have autism from the polio vaccines, for instance, that we were given. And we wouldn't necessarily recognize it because it was normalized.
yeah. Well, hopefully Kennedy Jr. will sort that out at some point in September when he announces what the causes of autism are to the world.
I think everybody's on the spectrum and that there is no specific cause, that it's general cause, but we've made it so that it's a lot more it's a lot more recognizable. And the first thing that happens when somebody's not thinking right is they get lumped into the autistic class of the medical endeavor and totally fucked over.
Yeah, so there's a lot of over diagnosis going on, I think, and there's stuff going on with vaccines, there's stuff going on with the environment, but there's also over diagnosis going on as well, and we need to separate them all out so we can work out what's actually going on in each place and what's doing what to who and why, basically. If you don't know what it is that's doing it, you can't stop it from happening.
I can explain Alzheimer's in chemical terms and why it functions as it does to shut a healthy brain down, given time, but that's a chemical explanation that makes sense. And as we said before, chemistry is a construct. And
Yeah,
so constructs are not reality, they are ways of looking at reality by analogy. And you can't take a construct and say it's true or false. You can explore it deeper to come up with ways of truth or fiction, but hey, if it works to make predictions that come true, it must have some value. And if you have something that every time you predict something does not come true, you can be pretty sure that that idea isn't workable. It
yeah,
would be fun to get a bunch of people and talk about these metaphysical questions in a round where we get more perspectives on the same topics and maybe get the AI to track what people are saying so that when it comes that we have the concepts the same but the language in not consistent, that's where we need to get, because I think most arguments between people are language difficulties rather than philosophy difficulties. That words don't mean what you think they mean or what I think they mean. They work based on the user who says those words thought of what they mean. And we've used the same words for so many different meanings, even over the course of our lifetimes, 50 or so years. And it changes. And they keep us off balance by allowing us to change the meaning of words. You don't find that in disciplines that are strict and regimented for the information that they provide.
yeah. There's well, there's specific terminology, isn't there? So there's a specific legal terminology, or chemical terminology, or physics terminology that has to be used precisely because that's the only way people know what each other's talking about, really.
Or, like the legal profession, maybe it isn't used precisely or not precisely as most people think of those words, but Black's Law Dictionary is quite the volume for defining legal words. And the best thing to do when you're in a legal system is keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably good advice, Lenny. On that note, I think we might wrap up at that point. But thanks for coming in again. Appreciate your time as always. And you're still at the newway.com, I take it.
Yeah, although I can't get into newway.com right now from just calling it up. It says that something shut it down. So you might
Right,
try it and tell me if you can get into it, because I can still edit it. I just can't bring up the site. And
right. I'll have a look when we're finished here. I'll have a look, see what happens.
yeah, I also think that coming up we'll try another forum for conversation. I've got my friend in Gather, and he doesn't like the 7 a.m. type of deal. But if we push it off to like 9 or 10 in the morning, he can facilitate a conversation through Gather, and we can see how it works and have the AI both recording, summarizing, and making notes. I have found though that when I use the AI to do that, I have to immediately go to the AI summary and correct it because it takes certain things that were said and repeats them out of context. And
Yeah, you have a
I
tendency to do that.
I have an AI that Yahoo uses and put on my mail account that supposedly summarizes my emails. I didn't ask for it, and it's never correct. It tells me things like I've won money in a contest in which I'm 2,500 out of 8,000, and there's no money coming up that close. But it also misassigns things. I had an AI following a meeting lose a person entirely because there were two people who were both named Melissa, and it lost one of the Melissas and then created an Andra to replace the Melissa that it didn't find because it, anyway, AI is a funny little game, and collective human superintelligence, where a lot of people get together and discuss reality to comprehend how it works, would be very interesting to see how it differs from AI, because AI supposedly comprehends reality to tell us how it works.
Well, I'll believe that when I see it. Believe it when I see it. Anyway,
All right, my
at that
friend.
point, then, so
Good
we're done.
talking to you again.
We'll wrap it up at that point. Yeah, thanks for coming in. I'll see you next week.
All right.